Alrighty guys, welcome back to Star Wars Review. Today I'm reviewing Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 5, The Return, which was directed by Nate Villanueva and was written by Amanda Rose Munez and was released on March 6, 2024, which I really love the episode. Like I said, the name of it is The Return, which can obviously mean a few things. Obviously, Omega returning to Hunter and Wrecker, also Crosshair returning to the Bad Batch. But what it truly was is that the Bad Batch head to Barton 4 and the Outpost, where Crosshair turned on the Empire, and so it's Crosshair's return to the Outpost. And so we see him, have to kind of face some of those demons, with him betraying the Bad Batch and also the Empire. And so I really loved all that. But also a big part of the episode was seeing how the other members of the Bad Batch react to Crosshair's return, which Echo does come back for this mission in this episode, which I'll get into more in a moment. But it's obviously mainly Hunter who doesn't trust Crosshair. And so the main point of the episode is seeing the two butt heads. And I really, really loved all the moments between the two in the episode. But the episode starts back on Pabu as we see Omega wake up. I think it was in the Marauder. And she gets greeted by Hunter and Wrecker, which she wonders where Crosshair is. So she goes out looking for him, which he's out by the water practicing shooting with AZ, which is nice to see that AZ is back with the Bad Batch and not Sid anymore. But we see that Crosshair's hand is still bothering him and messing up his shooting, which as Omega greets him, she notices that and tells him that AZ can look at it, but he once again brushes it off as nothing. But we then see Omega ask him what, are the exact skills needed to be a sniper, outside of good aim, which he says, patience and reading the environment, which he then points out that Hunter and Wrecker are watching them and says that, they don't trust him, which Omega tells him to give it more time, but also says, that you do just need to talk to them, as, that will help the situation out more. But we then see Omega kind of give Wrecker and Hunter the look, like, what the fuck are you doing? But then Echo arrives in his ship, so they head up to the landing area and greet him, which Omega and Echo share a hug, which then Echo looks at Crosshair as Crosshair says, "What, no hug for me?" Which was funny, but Echo says it depends on how good the intel is, which Crosshair has, about Tantus, which we then see them sitting around speaking about Tantus and the info Omega and Crosshair give them, which Omega does bring up Emery, the other female clone, which Crosshair doesn't have really too much to give, as he just says he was a prisoner, which, we see Hunter give him a look, like thinking he's lying and whatnot, but Omega then gives Echo Nala Se's datapad, saying there could be something on there, but the datapad is encrypted, and without tech, they have no way to decrypt it, which Crosshair then mentions that plugging it into an Imperial terminal will bypass the encryption, which he then mentions the outpost on Barton 4, which he says is remote and low staffed, so they should be able to easily infiltrate it and be able to decrypt the datapad, which even though Hunter doesn't trust Crosshair, he says they'll go on the mission, but he does tell Omega that she's staying on Pabu with Wrecker, as him, Crosshair, and Echo will head to Barton 4, but Omega insists on coming, as she feels guilty for leaving all the clones on Tantus, which convinces Hunter to allow her to come. But we then see them preparing to leave later at nighttime, which we see Omega and Crosshair speaking, which Crosshair tells Omega that Hunter is just trying to look out for her, and that she still is a kid, which Omega responds by saying that she is older than him, referring to Crosshair, and calls him little brother, which I thought was a funny, cute moment. But then Wrecker comes out and gives Crosshair a crate, which has his old armor in it, which Wrecker says that he held on to it because he didn't feel like it was right to get rid of it. But we then see them head to Barton 4 in the outpost, which has now been abandoned, but they exit the ship, and there's a scene with Crosshair coming out wearing his old armor, and Wrecker being excited that it still fits him, But Hunter then continues his distrust in Crosshair, kind of asking him why the outpost is abandoned, which, obviously isn't the fault of Crosshair, and in fact it helps the Bad Batch out more, but, Hunter is just a little blinded by that distrust. But they then notice the sensor beacons, which are bothering Batcher, which Crosshair says that they were there to stop raiders from raiding the base, as we saw in the Season 2 episode, The Outpost. And, Crosshair says that the raiders were dealt with, which Hunter asks him how he knows that, which Crosshair says, take a guess, which then, the two start fighting a little more, which then Echo breaks them up, getting them to focus on their mission. And so they head to the depot, which the door is kind of buried in the snow, so we see Batcher dig it out for them, and they head inside, where they find out that the sensors have nearly depleted the depot's power. So Echo and Omega start rerouting the power from the sensors and into the depot, which gets the depot back to full power so they can plug the data pad in. But while they're doing that, we see Crosshair walk around, and he finds the helmets of the clones, including Mayday's. At least I think it's Mayday's. Don't really know actually how Mayday's helmet got there, but they're scattered all over the floor. So, he picks them up and puts them back on display, which Hunter follows him and watches him as he does it, but then kind of realizes it's a little more personal to Crosshair, so he kind of awkwardly backs away. But Echo and Omega continue the data transfer, which Echo learns that there's more clones at Tantus than he thought. But there is a shot of outside where we kind of hear something maybe moving underground, something big. And then inside, we see Batcher sensing that and barking at it. And Crosshair noticing that, so he goes outside to investigate. And Hunter follows him outside also as the others finish the data transfer. Which it doesn't seem like there's any info on the location of the base. Just, info on, the clones and their medical stuff and whatnot. But, it's still better than nothing. But we see Batcher kind of continuing to be bothered by something. As we see Crosshair and Hunter outside getting into an argument. Which at first Hunter kind of wonders what the truth is about this outpost and why Crosshair got on the Empire's bad side. Which Crosshair tells him the truth that he killed an Imperial officer at this outpost, and that he betrayed the Empire, but the Empire betrayed him first. So, a little different than how Crosshair betrayed, obviously, the Bad Batch, but Crosshair then tells Hunter that he knows this isn't just about him, the reason Hunter is mad, but, also that Hunter failed to keep Omega safe, and it ended up being Crosshair who was the one to help save her, which just makes Hunter more mad, and it seems like he's gonna start throwing fists when he senses something coming for them, which is this big worm thingy. And so they rush back to the depot, which they need to come up with a plan to escape, as that worm kind of buried Echo's ship, so they can't just run to it and escape. But they eventually come to the conclusion that the sensor beacons were keeping the big worm thingy away from the perimeter of the outpost, and so they need to get them back online. But to restore power to them, they need to get to this fuse box thingy, which is in another building. And so Wrecker volunteers to do that, while Hunter and Crosshair go and get the worm outside of the sensor's perimeters, while Echo kind of goes to the tower and spots the worm for them, while Omega stays in the depot to reactivate the sensors. And so we see them do all that, which with Wrecker, we see him get to that other building, and then he has to dig his way through the snow like a dog, like Batcher did earlier. So I thought that was a funny moment. But most of the scene is of Hunter and Crosshair having to put aside their differences and work together, which at one point Hunter falls through the ground and into this cave made by the worm thingy. And so Crosshair kind of has to find him, which it all ends up working out, and they get the sensors back online with the worm outside of the perimeter, which there is a nice scene of Crosshair and Hunter afterwards, just kind of sitting down, taking a breather, and then they give each other, a little nod. But they then head back to the depot as Wrecker runs up to them and gives them a hug, which is cute. But in that moment, Echo speaks with Omega, saying he knew they would work out their differences, and there was no blood this time. But then sometime later, they dig out Echo's ship, and then we see Crosshair and Hunter speak, which Crosshair tells him that he thought he knew what he was doing with the Empire, and thought he was just being a good soldier, and that now he regrets what he did. Which Hunter tells him that he has regrets, and that, obviously everyone does, but you need to move forward and strive to be better, which I really enjoyed that scene. Seeing the two clones kind of start to forgive each other and move on. But they then board the ship and leave, and that's where the episode ends. Like I said, I really loved the episode. I thought it had great character moments. I enjoyed the action with the big worm thingy. And even though this episode was more focused on the characters of the Bad Batch, I do like that it moved along a little bit with the overarching story with Tantus. Not much, but it was still nice to have a little bit in this episode. But it was probably my favorite episode of the season so far, so my grade is going to be an A. So yeah, but next I'll review episode 6, which I think is called Infiltration, so you check that out then. But in the meantime, check out my reviews on the first 4 episodes, and all my other Bad Batch reviews and videos, and everything else to do. I've been Star Wars Review, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Everyone down! We're not big on following orders.
I wasn't planning on killing you, but you're making it very tempting.